Okay, let's talk about cultures. In the first recording about context, I talked in general how this information will help us in avoiding cultural misunderstandings. In recording 2 here, I will be more specific in discussing the Arab-Islamic context and more specifically that of the Gulf Arabs. Briefly, we mentioned this point in recording 1 when we said that a culture is like an iceberg. There's an observable part of the culture, which are usually words, actions, and dress, and they are dependent on a hidden part of the culture and what I call context. And in this recording, I will be talking about the Arab-Islamic context. Before I start that, I would like to discuss briefly 2 other concepts that are very important, and they are generalizations and stereotyping. When we talk about cultures, we tend to generalize because they do exist in reality patterns that are different between cultures. For example, Japanese cultures have certain traits or patterns in communication and doing business and so on that are different than Egyptian cultures. This is a fact. However, we can generalize when we talk about groups or communities, but when we go down to the individual level, we have to be careful that these generalizations don't make us fall into stereotyping, that all Japanese will be doing this way or behaving this way, and all Egyptians will be behaving this way. Doing that will have a closed mind and will be unable to have an efficient interaction between cultures. Some people are against generalizations because they don't want to fall into stereotyping. However, if we go by that and we don't generalize and we don't say these existing patterns, then we can't describe cultures. So we are depriving ourselves of information that do exist, patterns that are there. We deprive ourselves of information that can be very helpful and beneficial and that promote a better intercultural understanding. We just have to be careful that when we go down to the individual level, we don't say everybody's like this, and then we fall into stereotyping. So there are 2 general dimensions about involving the context of the Arab Islamic culture. The first one is Islam. Islam is not a religion. If I define religion is that it's my personal relationship with God. Islam is not a religion. Islam is a way of life. It affects all the observables. It affects how Muslims or how Arab Muslims dress, how they behave, and what they say. However, when you're looking at the Gulf Arabs you go down on the individual level, you will find that people fall on a range. Some are zero practicing, some are most practicing. So in general, Islam affects the context, the Arab context. However, if we go down on individual level, that degree to which it affects the context varies. Now, the other dimension is also Arab traditions. And I put on the other end modernity, westernization, globalization, however you want to call it. And this is the same thing. It's a range. And so in general, Arab traditions affect the context of the Arab Islamic culture in general. But to what degree, when we go down on the individual level, it varies. And you will find people anywhere in this field. Some are more traditionist, more practicing, some are less traditionist, less practicing, and so on. And so to summarize, these 2 dimensions, the Arab dimension and the Arabic traditions dimension and the Islamic dimension, these form in general the Arab context, especially in the Gulf area. Now, from these 2 filters, or these 2 dimensions, stems the observable part of the culture, the words, actions, and dress. This is in general. Now, if we want to be careful not to stereotype, also we have to remember the personal dimension to every individual that we meet in that part of the world. And this can include life experiences of that individual. How did he grow up? Where did he grow up? Where did he get his education? How old that person is? What are his temperaments? What actions or behaviors he's comfortable with, which ones he's not comfortable with. Sometimes the genetic makeup of people. And so the personal dimension is very important. And all of these form the context for people living in that part of the world. Now we have to remember that through this context, or stemming from this context, the Arab observable culture is presented. But however, we have to also remember that through this context, an Arab analyzes the observable culture of expats. And so, my advice to people living or wanting to live in that part of the world is for you to get more information about Arab traditions and about Islam. Personal dimension exists in all people. All people are different, but having more information about Arab traditions in Islam provides you with the ability that you analyze the observable of an Arab, his words, actions, and dress, in a way that truly represents what that person is trying to say or what he means. It also gives you more control on your part of the equation so that your words, action, and dress can be presented in a way that you know will be understood better through the Arabic tradition and Islamic filters.